Hello everybody, and welcome to this quick tutorial. Firstly, I want to thank you for downloading the modular Gothic Fantasy Pack. It's much appreciated, and I hope you get as much use out of it as I've been able to put into it. Alright, today we're going to be inputting or inserting the advanced input settings. If you are on Unreal Engine 5, it's actually quite simple. After looking into it, it's just hidden behind what looks like a complex system. So you've got what's called your input mapping context, and then you have your input actions. So what we want to do is we want to right click, we want to go to input, and you want to create an input mapping context. Once you've selected that, you'll be prompted with this empty screen. What you want to do is you want to hit the plus button for it adds any action you want. You name it. So I'll add a new one here. You'll see it added it at the bottom. And you'll hit this drop down. It should say none, and you will not have anything here. What you want to do is you want to create a new input action, and then you'll want to name it. So I'll do a test action here. And on the drop down, you're going to have the old version of the input systems here, where you can select a key value or manually choose an input. So I'll just do mouse right click here. So I've right clicked and you'll see that it has input right mouse button. If I hit the drop down, you'll see that there's triggers and modifiers. We are only going to be messing with the modifiers, but we won't do so just yet. We want to go back to our third person character. What we want to do for starters is we want to input this bit of code here. What this does is it will initialize the mapping context that we made. So you get your controller, cast to the player controller, then you want to get your input local player subsystem. That is input local. It's this pink function value right here. You'll click on it and it'll give you one of these subsystems. Plug it into your isValid just to make sure you always have the validity. And right click and do add mapping. I think you have to drag off of the blue pen for it. Add mapping context. Yeah, there you go. You have to drag off of the return value of the subsystem to get this node. And then you can hit the drop down and you can select your mapping context that you've made. I've made mine here. And you'll notice that I stripped out everything that was there before that was giving us compile errors. I just got rid of it all. The one thing that we do want to keep, or the two things we want to keep, are the items hooked up to the 1 key and the 2 key. Those are for toggling the light and toggling the cinematic camera. That's important. As well as the event tick. This is how the cinematic camera does the autofocusing. So if you want to keep the autofocus, you need to keep this. Alright, so first up we will start with the forward and the right movement. You'll see here I've already made the inputs. What you'll want to do is go to your mapping context, and where you added the new action, that is what's going to be what you type in here. So for mine, I've made one for each of the actions that I want. So I'll start with the move forward. Whenever you create the input action, you're going to be prompted with a value type. This value type will default to Boolean. For our movement, we want to use the axis 2D because there's two directions on the forward that we want to be able to use. So select that. Go back to your mapping context. Choose your input action asset. And then add your keys, W and S. And these are always a positive value. We used a 2D axis, and these are positive values. We want S to make us go backwards. So with the S option, hit the drop down, and go to modifiers. You want to add a modifier, and you want to choose negate. What negate does is it will invert whatever the value is. So if S is positive, we want to make it negative, we use a negate. Now we go back to our character, you right click and you do enhanced input, and at the very top it'll preload or show up whatever actions you have already created. So we want to do our move forward. And when we do our move forward, you'll notice that we hit the drop down, our action value is blue. We need float values out of it, not this 2D vector structure. You want to right click, split structure pin, and now you have your X and your Y. And then you want to get your control rotation. So get control rotation. And we want to do the same thing. We only need one of the values. So right click, split structure pin. We want to get the yaw, and we can get forward vector. It's important that you click in empty space. You don't drag off to do it, because the default value of a forward vector requires an input of a rotation. And if you try and do it off of a float value, it will not do it. It doesn't populate here. So right click an empty space to get that. We want to split the structure pin, get your yaw, and then we want to add a movement input. So we can actually drag off of this, add movement input. Boom. And then we want to input our axis value. So we'll be working on the X axis because we're only working on 2D. So these are going to be our positive and our negative values coming out of the X axis. That's the W and S that we did. And this is where the enhanced input really comes into play. You've got different states that the input can be in: triggered, started, ongoing, canceled, or completed. We just want to use the triggered execution. So once you have that hooked up, to test it, you can go into your map, hit play, and you should be able to move back and forth like this. You won't be able to turn yet, you won't be able to use your camera, but you can go back and forth like this. What you want to do next is, I'm going to get rid of this because I already have this. You want to do the exact same process and add it to your move right. You want to go to your mapping context. You want to hit the add action mapping. You want to select your drop down, create a new input action, name it move right. And once that's done, you want to hit the drop down and you want to add control bindings. And then you can add your D and your A for your left and right. We want to do the same thing after that. We want to go to the left, or the negative value. We want to add a modifier, and we want to select negate. Now once that's done, go back to your character. Same thing, right click, enhanced input, select your move right, right click the action value, split structure pin. This gives you your X and your Y. Then you want to get your control rotation, get your right vector. Again, remember, when you get control rotation, it will be a blue rotator value. Split the structure pin, get your right vector, split that structure pin, and now you want to input your X and your Z. These are what's going to be turning in place, whether you're going right or left. This is going to turn. Drag off of the 3D vector, and you get add movement input. You hook up your X value, and you should be good to go. Now when you test, you'll be able to move in every direction. Now, I've added jump. It's not necessary, but if you want to do it, what you'll need to do is do the exact same process. Go to your mapping context. You want to add a new mapping, select the drop down, and you want to create a new asset. And when you create a new asset, instead of doing a axis 2D vector, what you're going to do is you're going to leave it as a digital boolean. That'll be yes or no, because we are either jumping or not jumping. And you can right click, enhanced input, and select jump. And then just off of triggered, we're going to use the default Unreal Engine jump function. And once you've hooked those two nodes up, you can hit play. And boom. There you go. Now, last but not least, what we need to do is we need to be able to move our camera around. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did for the move forward and the move right. Go to your mapping context, add a new action mapping, name it look up, look right, whatever you want to name it. Create a new asset, and in that asset, it is going to be an axis 1D. Instead of a 2D, it's going to be a 1D. Now, you can do it with a 2D, and it won't matter, but it's good to get in the habit of only doing what you need. We don't want to have any excess of anything in long-term projects. You can do it with a 2D axis. I've chosen to do it 1D. You can do it either way. Go back to your mapping context. What you want to do is in your drop-down for your key, mine is on the look up, so I want to go to mouse Y, and this is the mouse Y axis. Now, the way that Unreal Engine works and a lot of other game engines is the Y is actually opposite, so it's inverted. So we want to go to our modifiers, add an element, and we want to add a negate, which will invert the value. We've added that. We go to our character, type in your input, enhanced input, look up, and then you want to right click and add controller pitch. So we want to look up and down. That's going to affect our pitch. We add our pitch, and we can drag the axis value directly into the pitch input value. This does take the raw 1-to-1 input. So if your DPI is really high, it's going to make your camera really, really, really quick. The sensitivity is very fast in this. So what I've done is I've multiplied the axis value by a sensitivity value. And I've just done 0.2. And how you do that is right click, multiply, get your operator, and then drag the output into the value, drag your input into the top, and then you can actually drag off of this empty input and promote to variable. And then you can rename your variable. I've named mine sensitivity. And you can hit compile, and the default value will be here for you to change. 0.2 I found is good for me. You might need it faster, you might need it slower. And we'll go ahead and plug that back in. And we want to do the same thing for the look right. Mapping context, add input, create a new asset, do look right, make sure it's a 1D axis float. Go back to your mapping context. You want to change the value of it. We're going to go to mouse X. We go to third person character, right click, and follow this last step one more time. Plug in your sensitivity, compile, save, and You are good to go. All right. Hope you enjoy, and I can't wait to see what you guys create with the asset pack.